Hello, a very warm welcome to everyone. We have a great turnout and we're really excited about everyone wanting to jump on with us today and dive into the world of employer branding. So I'm Siril, I'm the VP Marketing at Papirfly. For those of you who don't know us, Papirfly is a global brand management platform. We live and breathe brand consistency, essentially, and activating brands on a global scale, which is why I'm really excited to have Nika with me today. Nika is coming from SAP, the world's leading business software company. And she's been with SAP for 2.5 years. Is that right, Nika?
Yes.
Yes. So as an early talent in tech, Nika works at the Life at SAP social media and campaigns team. And she's really passionate about building inclusive teams, working with employer brandings, and making sure that you're attracting the most diverse and best talent that you can at SAP. So very soon, we're ready to dive into the challenges that SAP has been seeing when creating their employer brand, how they have activated it both locally and globally. But we do really want this to be engaging as well. So please do post your questions in the chat. After Nika has gone through her presentation, we will do like a fireside chat where we'll be answering all your questions as well. So I hope you'll all be engaged. We will also post a poll now. So answer it now, answer it later. So it's all about how you feel you've encountered challenges in securing buy-in from your stakeholders for your 2024 strategy. So feel free to answer that now or later, and then we'll circle back to it as well as we go and when we get to the fireside chat too. So I think on that note, Nika, I will hand the stage over to you.
Thank you very much. So first of all, thank you so much for having me. And I hope all of you are ready with some questions. Again, like Siril said, please feel free to ask anything. I really hope this is something where we can all learn something and get to know each other. So as you might already know, the title is obviously How Does SAP Activate Localized Employer Branding Across 5 regions globally, right? And we will be diving into it a little bit. For those of you who don't know, I will be starting really briefly, right? Who is SAP? What is SAP? SAP powers the most successful business around the world. It's one of the largest providers of business software worldwide. It does develop software solution for handling all the company's business. So some of you might have already gotten in touch with it when booking travel or booking expenses to your employer, or maybe you're in accounting or did have some touch points with accounting, right? So we do everything from accounting, controlling, sales, purchasing, right? And human resources. And we're used by companies all over the globe. We were founded over 50 years ago, so a little bit on the older side, and have over 157 nationalities worldwide working for us, and over 105,000 employees worldwide. Just to get you all a little bit started, I think quite a few of you have heard of SAP, but does anybody know what SAP stands for? Because when I first started, I told my mom, and then she was like, "Oh, what does it stand for?" I was like, "Okay, give me a second. I just have to look it up real quick," right? If you have any guesses, feel free to post them in the comments or comment at what you think it could be. Smiley and polite could be an acronym for SAP. Honestly, would have worked. My team were super, super, super open and nice. And the breakfast together is actually our tagline. So somebody did either their homework or knows SAP already, the building breakfast together. Yeah, but actually, system application and products is right. So that actually is the proper abbreviation for SAP. I just wanted to get you a little bit involved in this because it is actually always something I get asked. Okay, and I saw just created our EVP based on yours. I take this as a compliment. Obviously, my team is working hard. And we have a great manager who's driving everything forward. So now, since I introduced myself, I introduced the company, we can get to the meat of everything. One of the big things we had, right, in 2022, we revamped our EVP. We got it a new and fresh feel. We upgraded the look of it, and then we strategized how we could turn this over to employees, right, and enable them to become ambassadors for our ambassador brand. I think this is something a lot of us struggle with. Obviously, budget was tight at that point, and we just were coming out of the pandemic, right? Facing a lot of challenges. And we knew we had to like find a solution to make the EVP more graspable and more accessible and create more awareness about SAP and its culture. And then we started looking for a solution, and the one we found was Papirfly, that we could really utilize to create like an employee ambassador portal and give them all the tools they need. So I think this is different for every company. SAP already has a brand basically side. So what we wanted to create was, or launch was, an employee ambassador portal. And we just did that like late 2022. The goal behind this was also to empower SAP employees to share their highlights and successes, right? To humanize the content, because I think this is something all of us know. The best advertisement you can have are satisfied employees who share their successes, their stories, their experiences at an employer and being satisfied. And we wanted to give other people a glimpse in the life at SAP, right? So throughout all of the time, even when we had our old EVP, positive storytelling was always a vehicle of us for showcasing SAP as an attractive place to work. So we did want to give people something to highlight these stories and celebrations and of successes, and just give everybody, independent of region, age group, employee status, the platform to do so. And yeah, so we were relying also on our people and their testimonials to recruit the talent we needed at the time. And this is how we got to where we started. So I will be turning in a little bit more into what we did to get Papirfly embedded in our company and get it started. So what we did is we tried to enable all of our employees to become ambassadors. How we did this is when launching Papirfly, which we use as a platform that has ready-made assets for people to share, and also for a certain amount of people, the capability of creating assets with templates. We knew when we launched this, we couldn't just open and say, here you have it, like do whatever you want, right? We knew we had to be a little bit more sneaky and get it a little bit more embedded in the culture before we could officially launch it. So what we did is, the first step we did was we involved people in the creation of the portal, but also in the soft launch, as we call it. What we did for that is we identified 30 people within that are talent ambassadors that we knew that were active, for example, on their social media platforms or within the organizations. And we chose them from the 12 countries that are like our biggest hiring markets. So we asked them, hey, what are the successes you usually want to celebrate? If you celebrate something, what is something that's important to you? And going from there, we did create some assets that were ready-made. So for example, assets such as, I just celebrated my 1 year, 2 year, 5 year, 10-year anniversary at SAP. I just started a new position, social cuts in alignment with our EVP, right? Like tell it like it is and our principles. That are ready for people to share if they're unsure, for example, what to post with it. Because we all know on LinkedIn, on Instagram, on Facebook, posts with a visual perform way better than without. And if some people are uncertain of what to post, we wanted to give them ready-made assets to utilize, like to write their story and utilize them as a jumping off point. So what we did after we involved those people, right? We activated them. We made them we made the participation as easy as possible. We did this by doing enablements, by meeting with those people, by having talk with them, by clearly communicating what the goals were and how to be a part of everything. Furthermore, we obviously supported them, right? We wanted their support, but we were also supporting them. By supporting them, we provided them with the assets and templates that were already ready-made, right? But we also wanted their support in advocating within their specific markets for our platform and utilizing it to get their message across. So what we did there is these creators helped us demystify the EVP within the company. So I think this is most likely, depending where you work, an issue that's like broader that obviously employer branding or marketing knows what the EVP is and what it's all about. But if you talk to somebody like in sales, do they really know all the pillars of your EVP? Do they really know everything? They might know the gist of it, but can't really go in there. And we did want to bring it closer to all employees across the board. And so we were working with them to basically what we need to, at the time, win the war for talent and get the support, right? So we do know that there's like a wealth of collateral in the areas of talent attraction and hiring, right? So what we did, we allowed recruiters, right, to select content and create it for campaigns and various lines of business. So if you, for example, are hiring in a cloud services or something, we wanted them to be able to create a card that says we are hiring in this location for this position with the SAP brand and recognizable. How we did this, we also gamified this whole setup a little bit. We wanted to motivate them through challenges and recognition. We had to be a little bit sneaky here because this is globally, and in Germany, GDPR is like a very big factor you always have to be mindful of. So what we did in the end was we gave the creators 4 ambassador levels that they could reach, right? And for each level, we suggested a time frame around like 1 or 2 weeks, depending on the level. The last one was a little bit longer, where certain tasks should be completed. For example, for junior level, we said, hey, update your email signature to the new EVP style. Or hey, update your LinkedIn banner to this thing. And we were tracking, since there were just a few of them, we were tracking those for the applicants and giving them scores. And all of them got an animal name that only they knew. And then we did a leadership board at the end of the month to show, okay, for example, the deer has collected 500 points and the runner-up is like the sea lion or something. Again, we did this to encourage like a healthy amount of little competition and fun, right? Because nobody necessarily knew their other's position if they didn't tell them, except their own. But we were also in compliance of GDPR, which is not always encouraging of we didn't want to pit people against each other. We did want it to be fun and everything, right? And then the next step we did was multiply, right? After basically enabling those 30 people to become creators and ambassadors and really entrench them in the Papirfly portal, we asked them to multiply within their teams, to go into their teams and advocate for this platform, to give an overview of everything that is possible. Because I think most of you do have this, right? If somebody from another team comes and tells you, hey, use this thing, it's great. You're like, okay, I'll look at it later, or maybe I don't really know what to do with it. But if somebody from your team is like, hey, the last 4 months or something, I've been part of this like project and it was so fun, and they like asked for my opinion, and now this is ready and it will help us so much. And there's one of the people who was able to basically decide what it is we need. It feels way more involved, right? And this is the main way we got everybody involved in being an ambassador. I do think, obviously, there is more to it. We had some regions that were like a little bit more motivated than other regions. I think this is always the case. If you are working with a global company and a global brand, you need to be mindful of that, right? But since we worked so closely with those chosen creators, we could address it at point, right? So if somebody from a certain region came and say like, hey, nobody's like interested, but I did hear if we include this would be beneficial, we did it, right? So I will get back to this later, but communication is so incredibly important. And this is how we basically got everybody on board, creating those little challenges and really doing basically getting everybody on board. So I think some of you might be wondering, because like that's always the thing I want to know, what does this actually mean? What is actually the impact? What do we actually want to hear, right? And this is our 2023 in numbers. It's not 100% all of like, it's around, right? But just to give you an overview what Papirfly means to us now after we've launched at the end of 2022, and I've gone through some new iterations of our EVP and got people on board. Again, we do know we have over 100,000 employees. However, Papirfly is primarily used by us from a talent attraction standpoint. So a lot of HR talent attraction people are using it, or business leaders that have a unit that is hiring or promoting events. So we had over 4,000 users who logged in and utilized Papirfly as a platform to grab some assets, propose something, or take just a look, because we do have more information on there. We do have over 2,000 assets created last year alone. Again, when you think about it, like only a certain amount of people at the moment have a license to create. Obviously, some teams have arranged themselves that like all the requests come to the creator that's within their team, and this creator creates for the whole team. Sometimes all individual ones have like a license. But we do see it everywhere. If you also take a look, for example, at the SAP LinkedIn account and then go under the Live tab, you can see what our employees are posting, or people that have SAP as their employer on LinkedIn, which is not necessarily the same as being employed. And you can see that a majority of the assets you will see, or the pictures you will see, will have the SAP branding, which is actually like so amazing for us. One instance we had that was really, really inspiring, because like we never actually intended for that, but it turned out perfectly, was we usually have a DCOM at SAP. It's a developer kickoff meeting. And the one in India last year, they had on-site booths, and employees could come by. They would snap a picture of them and create on-site an asset with their faces and just completely prepared for them. And then they could share it to LinkedIn right at the DCOM. So with those over 2,000 assets created, right, like more people celebrated their work achievements on LinkedIn. And also we nurtured the community and the team of creators by integrating Papirfly in the onboarding now. So we do link to it now to drive more people to post on their platforms, hey, I started my new position at SAP, or hey, I started a new internship, or I'm like growing there. Because again, one of the big hurdles we saw was that we do have actually people that might be interested in posting something, but don't have a picture they feel comfortable about, or maybe don't know where to start, right? So we wanted to give them something to make it easy. One of the things we have that's really also important for us is we didn't really want to measure solely based on assets created, right? Because sometimes like one asset will have a huge reach. We won't obviously see because it's shared by the private account of our employees. But what we did was we source tagged. So one of the options we do have is tagging our sources, and then we on the back end are able to basically see what happens in the back end. So when we really like properly tag our sources, we see, okay, how many people clicked on our jobs page, which is the main driving force we want, right? We want to fill open positions. So we had over 10,000 clicks that were attributed to Papirfly assets. Obviously, if some people forget to tag, we lose them. This is always a trouble you can run into, right? But those were the ones we were able to see. And then from the back end, we do see, okay, this is the amount of people who clicked the links. This is the amount of people who filled out an application, who finished an application, who were then deemed qualified by a recruiter, and who were then invited to an interview and subsequently hired. So it's really like interesting for us, and like one of the metrics we do want to keep in mind how many people we have. And one thing we did notice that candidates applying through Papirfly had a higher percentage of being qualified candidates comparatively to our other organic channels such as Instagram and Facebook, where we don't necessarily pay for ad space. We do, obviously, this is the goal we had in mind, right? By amplifying the networks of our employees, they reach out to the people that are within the same realm, right? So for example, if a developer is posting, hey, we have a new position in a development team, most likely a lot of their connections on LinkedIn will be other developers through their studies or through their former jobs or something. So reaching the right audience through this has made a huge impact. Overall, at the moment, we have around 80 creators. So those are the people who can change the templates we have. The others are able to download, but not to change. we estimate to have saved around 1,000 design hours in general, right? Freeing up our designers to work on more intricate designs, because before we got a lot of requests, hey, we're having an event, we want to advertise it, can you please send it, like, can you please create something that's compliant, or we were asked to create broad banners or something, and now our designers can focus a little bit more on creating other content. This is an estimate, right? Like the next number is just there to give you an overview. We do have in-house designers, so we don't really usually work with an agency. But if you break it down to agency fees, if you have to work with an agency, we save the equivalent of $100,000 if it was done externally. Again, we do have in-house, but I think for some companies, for some industries that don't have an in-house designer team, that does make a huge difference. If you have any questions, again, feel free to pop them in the chat, right? I'm really happy to answer anything if you think something was unclear. So, right? Because
I have a question. Yeah. I'll jump in. So you said that it kind of you do have in-house designers, but they've probably changed a little bit how they work as well. You briefly touched on this. So do they? Are you reducing the amount of time going back and forth, maybe, or are they working more strategic than they did, or how has that changed?
Yeah, so the workflow has changed a lot, right? By us just looking at the created templates and approving them, we freed up a lot of time for the designers. So now they're involved in strategic positions, basically, to see, okay, what can go in there, and also to sometimes create more intricate designs for paid campaigns, or for create more video spaces or something, and work on more intricate designs. So it has changed how our workflow within the team is distributed, and also freed up a lot of time for them.
Amazing. And how has this fed into the wider recruitment marketing strategy that you're working on?
So obviously there is we have a global strategy, right? So we do have an overall global strategy, but there are some differences between recruiting early career talent, between recruiting professional talent, between recruiting India and the US. We do see that it has alleviated the daily aspects a little bit of recruiting, right? Obviously, doing the interviews and talking with the candidates can't be replaced by this, but it has changed how to also, to a certain degree, how to source those candidates. And so it has made an impact. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Then moving on, navigating the journey, right? I did go a little bit into how we launched this, but then how do we continue to basically keep everybody engaged and keep this up to date? There have been some challenges. I think this is something a lot of us or all of us faced, right? While the portal is a tool for our employees to freely use, and we do not control it too much, right? Because there are only two aspects. The assets we uploaded, they can download, which are already approved, and the templates they can create themselves that we then have to approve or reject again. We have to increase our communication, right? Because I think everything is a learning curve. You're learning all the time, right? What maybe you anticipated one thing, but somebody surprises you and does a completely different thing that you didn't even think was possible with the templates, where we had to be more mindful of how often, how much we communicate with them, right? So where we arrived was that we need ongoing training and ongoing communication. And my colleague Sian is doing an amazing job and is on top of a lot of things. So what we are doing is we're doing enablements where we update and train creators, right? So for example, in July of last year, we upgraded our EVP design again, once more. And doing this, we also launched new templates. So we had to get aligned with the creators and tell them, hey, look, we're launching those 2 new templates. This is the function we're intending it to. You can do whatever, right? But this is how it works. This is what you have to take a look at. And for example, after we usually do those by need, right? So this time we launched a new design. And sometimes if we see a lot of new creators signed up, we also do an enablement to get everybody on the same page. We do have monthly community calls that are just to engage with small challenges, right? Again, the teams locally do sometimes make different decisions, right? So for example, in India, we had one team that said, okay, we will create an asset or a specific asset for every single open position we have. While, for example, in US, we had a team who said, okay, we are advertising a team specifically, so all open position a team, and we're like going more in the team direction. And we are connecting everybody and letting them talk about what's working best, but also if there are any issues or feedback they have, right, it can be raised there. We additionally have a Teams channel that's just for the day-to-day, right? Like maybe you need to get something approved really quickly, or maybe something isn't working the way you want it to, or maybe there's something and we just want to stay in contact, right? So this is where the day-to-day questions, feedback, and problems can be discussed. And then we have monthly reports on our success metrics, right? Those will be shared with leaders, but also with the creators, so they know, hey, we're not tagging for nothing. We saw that we were able to hire so and so many people, or we saw so and so many people clicked on our jobs page. So they also have something to raise on. And again, our challenge is we're constantly educating creators on this content, right? And having increased flexibility, which is great, but leading also then to increased communication. So being on standby, getting people people asking us, can we use this template this way? And we didn't initially think about it, but if it works, right? Or also like realizing, okay, there are some best practices we need to enable people on, right? Because if you are creating this asset, for example, to advertise an open role, and it's just one single role, you do need to mention the location. Stuff like this, where we thought, okay, yeah, that's super fine, but then we see that it like piles up, and then we kind of just communicate it with them. Yeah.
So I have another question for me. So, I mean, you're working with a lot of different stakeholders on this, right? So have you seen your stakeholder priorities changed at all as you've been working with us?
Yeah, they do constantly change. I think this is, first of all, the nature of the game as well, but also with this, obviously, Papirfly has made some things way easier for us to manage and go from there. But always, like, I think recruiting is like a cyclic thing, right? So by region, by open position, there are always changes we need to adjust to. There are also obviously within the market and within us as a company. But yeah, overall, I would say communication has gotten easier in this regard. But yeah, just new challenges arose from this issue in general.
And how do you navigate that, working both globally while making sure that it's also taken care of locally? How do you balance that? So,
I mean, I'm in a global employer branding team, so this is like a given that we're global. Like most of my team is in different areas. So one of my colleagues is in Singapore, one of my colleagues is in India, and we have some in the US and the UK, right? So it is really nice to have all those perspectives. And as we said before, we mainly let people on a regional level decide, right? Because, for example, I can't read Korean. If our Korean recruiters create like a template, obviously I will look over it that the spacing looks right. I will put it in Google Translate and take a look. Okay, does it sound okay? But grammar-wise, I can't do it, and I don't really know. They know best like what their talent is. But we will then pick up in enablements if we see like things that are piling up, right? So we are taking more care of the global and are in constant communication for them to be able to take care alone on the local level, because it's just too big to really do this. I did see some questions. Should we answer them later? I can also answer them.
I think we can jump into to all the questions coming in at the end as well. Okay. We'll make sure to make a note of all of them. But one other one that I had that I think showed up a little bit as well here in the chat is you mentioned you have your metrics and you use tracking URLs, so you can see the effects. But how do you track the global usage from the Papirfly platform and all the assets being made?
Sorry, can you like repeat the last part? Sorry.
Yeah, so how do you track the global usage of the platform and the assets that are being made?
So some of them we do track within like Papirfly as a platform in general. They do you do provide insights and metrics, right? Like of the usernames, like who is creating the most assets, like where they based, right? Obviously, for some people we just know, and overall, yeah, we just look at base tracked on asset creation and like then impact, but also by using our backend, we can filter by country, for example, or by month it was posted.
Amazing. Thank you. I'll let you go. And I think we have a few more slides to go, and then we'll jump into all of your questions as well.
It's just a few more. So one thing we did want to do, right, because this is for our employees, this is for all of our colleagues, is to have like the cross-functional collaboration and like also be more in tune with what's needed from like the company in general. So SAP has a lot of employee network groups. Some of them, to just name them and give you an oversight, at like the Business Women Network, the Black Employee Network, the Autism at Work Network, right? We have lots of like employees coming together with common interests or factors that like unite them, and building up those communities to basically amplify their voices, talk about shared experiences. And this is something we do want to encourage, obviously, because it's something we are really grateful to have at SAP, and we have a lot of diversity at SAP. So we work really closely with those ENGs to collaborate, for example, key dates or for aligned messages in general. So as you can see on the left side, we did have for Pride last year, we had cards that were uploaded and on Papirfly, and together with a suggestion of what the caption could be if you post it, for people to download, right, to celebrate Pride Month. And also our Pride ENG turned 2022 last year, and we wanted to celebrate this occasion while still keeping it on brand, making it recognizable. And then obviously the thing I mentioned a lot and that people are, I think, most curious about, like the recruitment marketing campaigns, right? So sometimes if we have a unit that's hiring a lot, we also upload specific assets that are downloadable, besides the one that like the recruiters create to make hiring cuts along the business needs and attract talent for the personal deadline. So the next slide is already the Q&A. So that was basically it. But I do hope, and I do see that quite a few of you posted some questions. We can get into, I think.
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much, Nika. First of all, it was really interesting to hear about your journey on this as well. So yes, let's dig into the question. I have loads, and they're popping stuff into the chat as well. We will start with the ones in the chat because I have already asked a lot of mine. So I will let someone else jump in as well. So let's see here. So first of all, from Florian, thanks a lot for the insight. What key metrics do you use in order to track the success of this specific initiative, especially looking at the 80 creators that you activated?
So for us, the most important thing I would say is seeing obviously how many people we drive towards our jobs page and get them to apply to open position, and then also look at like qualified candidates, because like overall, like our biggest goal is to attract like qualified candidates for our open positions. So we do look mostly at application numbers and how many people we hire through this initiative. Again, I'm not saying that's the only thing we're looking at, because building awareness is also something we obviously can take in mind, right? I think a lot of you might have heard this, but you need 7 to like 12 touch points to like really remember a brand that you weren't that familiar with before. And okay, sorry, someone just tried to open the door. And you do really need that, right? To get people in touch and like get them aware of SAP as an employer. Again, and the ultimate metric we mostly look at is applications and hires. I hope that answers that.
Thank you. Next one, very interesting one. So do you guys use external recruitment companies at all at some global locations? And has your employee portal helped to reduce this reliance?
So mostly, like we have in-house recruiters, right? So we don't like, I can speak globally everywhere that it's never happened before, right? Like there were maybe before my time, as far as I'm aware, we mostly don't hire external recruiting companies, but have most of them in-house. And I mean, again, like this is one thing we do want to, that I did highlight, right? Like a lot of the people that applied through the Papirfly source links, which again, like if people don't include, like properly do the link and don't include the source, we do lose them. But we have seen that like a lot of the people that applied for Papirfly are really qualified, which is again what we wanted. So this does have an impact on recruiting overall. But again, there's so many factors that play into each other, right? Like we are relying on our other colleagues and employees to share within their network, and we're relying on their network, right? If none of those people within their network are looking for a job or are qualified for this position, there's not that much impact to be made. But overall, it has made like a positive impact on the pipeline, just getting people to apply and them being qualified.
All right, amazing. Yeah. Thank you. Next one is from Clara. What's included in the template and in what platforms do you use?
Okay, so in the templates that we use, usually what's included is the color scheme. So we have obviously brand guidelines on the colors, as you can see in the presentation. Those blues are like SAP branded blues that are included. And then we have at the moment like the We Build Breakthroughs Together tagline and the waves. There are a lot of elements that are open, right? The only thing we do have that's like non-negotiable is the anvil shape, the SAP color scheme, and the SAP logo. Everything else is kind of editable, to be honest, because we have templates that are for quotes, for example, that can be with a picture or without a picture. The picture can be within an anvil or next to the anvil. And the text, like you can have the tagline on the cards, but you don't need necessarily to have the tagline on it. You can have a QR code. So there's lots of things that are customizable, but the only things that are like not open are, again, the font, the colors, and the anvil and the logo.
So you can choose what is locked to stay brand consistent, and then you can choose what is open to have that local edge and to be able to act fast and give people the power to create things themselves as well. So you kind of pick and choose what is locked and what is free to change around. Cool. Good. Thank you. Okay, next one. So first of all, from Thomas, thanks a lot for being the front runner of EVP management. We have you as an example. Good for you. We are now refreshing our EVP statement pillars, but I wanted to ask how you designed the hiring personas. How did you work with them in the overall EVP strategy and campaigns?
Okay, this is a very like in-depth question. So how we designed the hiring persona. So there's like obviously a lot going on in like a global company. What we did with our EVP, we talked to an absurd amount of people, like over 10% of like the amount of employees we have, just to give you an overview, to really work out, okay, what are the needs in the specific markets and in the specific areas, right? Like early career talent, professionals, graduates, executives. And then we also work closely with different platforms to get like, for example, LinkedIn Insights or something to see, okay, what is it that people within this area it identified as like their most important traits, and then we cross them with what we identified with talking to people. So it is like a really involved process, and we always like try to get new insights and new input. So if we work, for example, on a campaign, a lot of the campaigns we do are LinkedIn ads or like ads on or organic posts also on Facebook and Instagram to utilize like the network we already have. Because again, this is a really big advantage of being such a big company. We already have quite a few followers and people who actually are interested in working with us and follow us closely and look for those opportunities. But if we go for a specific campaign, we always look on a, like, obviously then mostly sometimes it's regional, right? We look, okay, what are the needs from the business, and also what are the needs from the talent within the specific we are searching for. So if you're searching for developers in Hungary, then that have a certain amount of experience, right? We do take a closer look, okay, what do the people who are developers in Hungary with this amount of experience say that are the most important things for them? And then we try to tailor our EVP messaging towards the needs of the target group, basically. I hope this answers it. If not, like, please write again if I missed something. Yeah.
Amazing. He says thank you. So I think that answered it. All right. So I think another question here was around what platforms you use for recruitment. I think you kind of answered that. So the question was around, do you use LinkedIn or Facebook or anything else? Is there anything else that you're using that you think would be valuable to share?
I mean, obviously know your audience, know who you want, right? Like, I think depending on what you are, actually, like who you are as an employer, what you're doing, TikTok is obviously like a huge source. And I would really, like, depending on what you do, right? Like, I would really urge to like use this avenue because it is easier to target. Like, obviously the user base on TikTok is quite young. And we also want to reach a lot of people that are a younger age group, right? So that would be an avenue I would pursue there. And with LinkedIn, again, like recruitment marketing, there are multiple streams we're doing at the same time. Again, by having organic posts from our like colleagues who are then reaching their network to, again, targeted that are paid ads. But yeah, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram are like the main platforms we use. Amazing. On job boards.
Thank you. Yeah. And to follow up on that, which I think is very relevant for a lot of us doing a lot of recruitment, because we do tend to get a lot of applicants in, right? So how do you make sure that those candidates that are applying are highly qualified when you run those marketing campaigns?
I mean, that's actually, honestly, like if it's on LinkedIn, super easy because you can filter. If you have a LinkedIn campaign, you can say, I only want this ad to be shown towards people who have this experience, this in their, like on their LinkedIn profile, those skills or something, and only people who tick that box will be shown your like everything. So that is actually quite like well. And then obviously on the back end, like our recruiters do have to go through the applications and see, is this person qualified for this job? So we try our best to not overwhelm them, but yeah.
Balance between the filtering in the ads and how you actually handle it internally as well. Cool, thank you. Next question is from Daniel. Thanks for the great insights. How long did the implementation of the Papirfly platform take approximately?
Actually, a good question. Like, honestly, I'm really sorry, but I don't have like a really clear answer from like beginning of talks to like the end, and also like implementation. Again, some countries took to it a little faster than others. I do want to say, right, like we started searching in the beginning of 2022, and by October we had launched. That included like talking to the creators. So I would say at least half a year, a little bit like longer, but like there were some interim steps and I was also not included in, right? So my old manager and my other colleague were the ones to find Papirfly, get in contact, talk, get a demo, right? Like I wasn't like part of all those beginning steps. So I hope this like gives you an overall answer that you're okay with, but I don't really know like by like closer than that.
And I guess it kind of depends on your internal processes and how big you are and how many steps you have in your procurement team. I would say the first step is know your own buying process too, so that you can know who to involve. You know, the faster you know who to involve, the faster you can align internally to get those ambassadors in. And make sure that you're talking to the right people internally to drive it forward as well, because you didn't do that alone, right? You had your colleagues kind of pushing for it as well. So getting people internally to see the value and selling that inwards I think is very important.
And procurement is a really good comment. Like, that depending on the size of your company, that can be really quick or take really long time.
Okay, thank you. Next question is from Sophie. Thank you for your insight. How do you organize your responsibilities of your communication activities between your communication team and the employer recruitment team? As you mentioned, for example, to communicate about networking initiatives.
Okay, so this is actually a good question that I also don't have like a necessarily like really straightforward answer to. There is like always this give and get between the communication channels, right? Like we have internal communication teams that's like different from external communications teams, is different from the employer branding team, right? When you do say like highlighting those network initiatives, we are always like obviously looking at the lens of what's attractive for talent, and those initiatives are, I think, a big pull. Of having a community, of having like-minded people who want similar things as you in life, who are also pushing you. So we approach them like from this, okay, how is this also interesting for the talent that might apply for us? And we always go from this angle, right? Like some of the communication team is responsible for products that we own, right? So there's not too big of an overlap. And if it happens, we just align internally. And yeah, responsibilities are usually by department what we have, right? Like with the recruitment team, they also do some communication, but it's mostly internally with between each other, right? Or amplifying voices, and employer branding is more outward facing. I do hope that answers this. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you. One final question that we have in the chat, and guys, feel free to continue posting your questions if you have more. Final one is from Justin. So also an interesting one. Would you say that video or animations or GIFs, etc., is your biggest growth media type to push out to recruiting channels?
So yes and no. So it really depends if you're looking at organic or paid. If you really think about it, like think about your own situation. If you're on LinkedIn scrolling, if it's not really attention grabbing or something, like very little people watch videos on LinkedIn, or this is like the current state, right? Like everything is always changing. This is not a definite answer that's like set in stone for all the time. We do use videos for advertising, but for example, on LinkedIn, we've seen, okay, static images do perform better in general than videos. But obviously, if you're looking at a platform like Instagram, Reels is like videos is all the way to go. And especially, again, they need to be attention grabbing within the first 3 seconds. People usually decide if they want to watch something or not. So you do need to have the hook in the beginning and then be really straightforward and be really, really short form videos. GIFs, I don't really honestly, that depends. Like it's good for an amplifier on LinkedIn because sometimes if you start a new position or you got promoted, there's like this little function where you can make an announcement that also gets like automatically a little push from LinkedIn. And there it's good to use video or GIFs because that is like the featured asset that like LinkedIn wants you to use there. But overall, I wouldn't really say that GIFs or animation necessarily have seen a big impact, but videos, yeah.
And again, as you said, I guess it kind of depends on your audience as well. So it's all about testing, maybe create a few templates for video, a few templates for statics, and then try it out and see what works and adopt that data-drivenness into your workflows to make sure that you are doing what works for you and your audience as well.
Yeah.
Final question in the chat that we have. Did you find any of your regions adopted the brand activation easier than others? If so, why do you think that was?
So we do see that there are like differences in how like the different regions use it. Obviously, like for example, India was really really using it a lot from what we see. I do think there's like, even though we have like an overarching SAP culture, like obviously there are still like regional cultural differences. And I do think that like in India, a lot of the colleagues like maybe set goals like within a team differently than like in other regions. So we did see, for example, what I mentioned before, that specific team in India had like the goal to create a single asset for each open position they wanted to advertise. It's just, I think they were like just a little bit more engaged and more happy to have this assets ready at hand. But also, I mean, this goes hand in hand with how many open positions are within a specific region, right? Like if you're advertising in a region where there's only like 3 or 4 open positions within a team, your need is like a little bit lower than like one where there are like hundreds of thousands of open positions and you need, or maybe the competition is also higher, right? So from what I personally saw, most of Asia was a little bit easier to activate than, let's say, the US or Canada. But I mean, that also has like a multitude of factors, right? Like also management of the team, for example, like what are the goals within the teams, right? Those are things we don't have direct insight into, right? But it make a difference.
All right, thank you. We got one final in here from Julie. Quick question. Going back to your 4 levels of ambassadors, how were you able to track if people were updating their LinkedIn profile, as an example?
Okay, we just looked. So again, like those were only the 30 people, the 30 initial creators we identified to be our like first ambassadors, are the ones who like go out there and amplify for us, right? So there were only 30 people and they signed up, like we approached them and they signed up voluntarily. And then we just said like, hey, if you want to partake, those are the goals by the end of the month or by the end of the week. If you do them, you like go up to the next level, basically. And then we just manually checked because, again, those were just 30 people out of 12 countries that we identified as being people who are like already do a lot. And we then also asked if they wanted to be part of, and they agreed, right?
Cool. I think that were all the questions from the chat. I have one final one that I want to ask. And that's how, I mean, implemented this strategy it was obviously a lot of work. And so I'm interested in how did it change your day-to-day work life and your workflows and how you work as a team?
Yeah, so it did actually free up a lot of time for us specifically, right? Because again, before that we had globally like recruiters approaching us to create like cards for like open positions, for events they're hosting, for specific like other things they wanted to show, right? And obviously having like a platform where people can just create it themselves has opened up space. Obviously this has created other points that I talked about, like the communication and everything, right? And now the people can go in, create a template, and we at the end, like in the beginning of the day, middle of the day, end of day, within our different time zones, we take a look at what the creators are doing and approve or reject the content. So this is obviously a new task we got, but it does free up a lot of time for our creators. And we just have basically within our team that's quite small, a lot more time to focus on other things. Obviously, the platform itself brings new opportunities to create new content and do things. And so obviously we are working on improving all the time, giving like better information or more up-to-date information. But it has freed up our workload quite a bit, especially our designers.
Love that. Thank you. I think those were all the questions, and we've almost spent an hour. So I think it's probably a good place to stop with our questions as well. Just quickly going back to the poll that we started the call with discussing. So we asked you guys if you've encountered any challenges to secure buy-in from stakeholders for your 2024 strategy. We've gotten 34 answers. I don't know if you guys can see the poll. I think you can. But it's interesting. So 0 has answered that they're fully aligned with their stakeholders. Is that kind of, do you recognize this, Nika, in terms of challenges? Do you feel like there are a lot of new challenges? Are they the same old? How do you experience this?
I think every year brings new challenges. Every month also brings new challenges, right? So I think I'm with the yes for new challenges fraction, which is the second biggest. I mean, obviously some challenges always remain, but I do think they slightly adjust with new upcoming things, right? But overall, yeah, I think we're in a good place.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, you have Nika and mine's contact info if you want to reach out and continue on the conversation. I think we're both more than happy to jump on a call and discuss further as well if you do have any questions or want to dig into the Papirfly platform or how SAP is using it or how you can drive this to really create brand ambassadors both globally and locally. We're more than happy to chat with you guys, so feel free to connect and reach out with us. Thank you guys for all your engagement. It's been really great having you. Thanks for posting all your questions. And thank you for joining from all across the globe. As I said, we have recorded this, so we can share the session as well with you afterwards in case you missed anything. Thank you, Nika, for joining us. It's been super interesting. So thank you for being so open and sharing. Really appreciate it.
So thank you also a lot. And also I saw somebody is from Singapore. Please go to sleep. It's really late, no? You can definitely reach out to me also on LinkedIn. I do have to be honest, I only check about like once a week all my inbox. So please be mindful. I'm not ignoring anybody. But yeah, thank you all for turning up, giving me this opportunity. And I hope some of you got some answers you wanted, right?
All right, amazing. Thanks, guys. See you all later. Have a great day. Bye.
Bye.